Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. Other than the water and power crisis currently dominating public discussion, job creation and unemployment are perhaps the most high-profile and contentious issues of this year. Renee Carayol educates us on the best responses to the global unemployment crisis and on how each of us can best equip ourselves for a changed employment landscape. Also on the next episode of First Issues, we take you through the journey that led to the establishment of FNB's First Park. Although Botswana's official unemployment readings have all been around 20%, a 2012 Gallup report quoted in the Sunday Standard says only 20 to 29% of Botswana's able-bodied citizens are employed full-time, compared to South Africa and even Zimbabwe's 30 to 39% employed full-time. eConsult's economic review of the first quarter of 2015 also paints a grim picture for the 40,000 or so Botswana that graduate from training and education every year and enter into the working age population. Formal sector job creation is slow. The 2,000 new jobs produced a year, plus the about 3,000 jobs released by those leaving the labor force, make for only 5,000 openings on average to cater for this multitude. Only about 15 to 20% of new entrants into the labor force will get formal sector employment. And of the limited job posts that open every year, the country has experienced significant losses, with 1,350 jobs lost in the first 3 months of this year alone. Our guest this evening, business and leadership speaker, broadcaster and author Renee Carayol, who has acted as an advisor to organizations such as the World Bank, the United Nations and McKinsey & Co., says, however, that this problem is not only confined within the borders of Botswana, that all over the world, policymakers and leaders are having to find solutions to rising unemployment and its disruptive social consequences. These sentiments are echoed in this year's International Labour Organization, or ILO, World Employment and Social Outlook report, which says that since the start of the 2008 global economic crisis, more than 61 million jobs have been lost, and that by 2019, 212 million people will be out of work, up from 201 unemployed right now. Join us now as Renee fills us in on the best responses to what has been labeled a jobs crisis and on how each of us can best prepare ourselves for a changed employment landscape.
Global youth unemployment is at a level we've never seen before in the history of business. And the numbers, the research tells us it's nearly 40% of youth are unemployed around the world. So the first big challenge we have is not peculiar to Botswana, it's not peculiar to Southern Africa, it's a global problem, a real challenge. And the stats tell us we need to create 600 million new jobs in the next decade globally. We've never had a challenge like this before. However, mankind has never failed before either.
What would your advice be to the young, unemployed, educated person? Because it's quite a challenge. It's emotionally, physically, mentally taxing.
The rules of engagement for work have changed. Therefore, the rules for education need to change as well. But unfortunately, education is lagging some 4, 5, even 10 years behind the changing nature of work. So if we look in America today, which is always where we look for the most prominent changes in the workforce, nearly 50% of companies in the United States have nobody on the payroll. Everyone's freelance. Everyone's contract. People are taking ownership of their careers. So a freelancer can work for 3 organizations simultaneously, as opposed to the old-fashioned work, the old nature of work, where we only had one employer. It's changing, the mindsets need to shift. In the digital world, I can sit at home with my broadband connection and I can be a freelancer for 3 different companies in 3 different geographical parts of the world. Universities aren't producing people who are prepared for that or equipped for that. If we narrow back to Africa, we have a similar problem, but it's slightly different. And if I focus a little bit on Botswana, where a well-intentioned government 20, 30 years ago made a fantastic decision. If you're prepared to commit to your A-levels and pass them with the right grades, you can go to university anywhere in the world. 20 years ago, groundbreaking. Today, out of touch, out of date. Our graduates are coming back with a skill set that's no longer fit for purpose. There's a mismatch. What employers are asking for, what the graduates have, do not fit. They just don't fit. And it's the same problem in Europe, it's the same problem in America, and but it's accentuated here. So let's take a look at the Middle East and North Africa, where not too many years ago the Arab Spring erupted. And it erupted exactly for this reason. Many employers had jobs available, but many of the youth were unemployed. And there was a complete mismatch. And the youth decided to go on the streets. And this is something we should be very careful and listen to. Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, all lost their heads of state by a vibrant, well-educated young workforce that couldn't work. They were desperate, the graduates were desperate for work, but there's no work for them. What has happened in the Middle East and North Africa, there's a not-for-profit organisation that's been created, which is brilliant. It's called EFE, Education for Employment. They sit between the universities and the employers. They found 25% youth unemployment, yet 87% of companies said they couldn't find the right skill set. So what EFE did, they went to the employers and said, what is it you're exactly looking for? Let us work with us to design the courses that are going to fit these clever people who are not fit for purpose. They started to recruit people that they trained in conjunction with the employers, creating the perfect fit. The results are unbelievable. It's not just people who've got jobs, they've got jobs that they love. Retention rates are incredible. They're working with 700 different employers, creating jobs for thousands and thousands of the youth. Let's come back to Botswana. We're taking the virgin graduates who academically bright, in terms of fit for purpose experience, 0. With employers in a changing world, changing agenda, looking for something different. We need something in between that takes the hungry, bright, but totally inexperienced youth, understands what the employers want, and creates this middle ground. What I see is something that will only perpetuate the problem. Government's well-intentioned, it's investing, it's trying to teach entrepreneurship. You can't teach entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is born here. Many years ago, not many, about 5 years ago in the UK, we tried to crack this problem. Can we teach entrepreneurship? The first thing we had to do is find a crude definition for entrepreneurs. We used self-made millionaires. We found 70,000 out of a population of 66 million. 70,000, it's a small amount. But those 70,000, it was really interesting. 49% of them were dyslexic, they had a learning difficulty. 59% came from deprived or dysfunctional backgrounds. That should ring a bell here. Most of our graduates don't come from deprived or dysfunctional backgrounds. Most of our graduates aren't dyslexic. That's what created the hunger, that's what's created the drive. They didn't feel they were appropriate, they were adequate. And the desperation to prove that they were is what drove the entrepreneurship. You can't learn it in a school. You go and learn it in a classroom from a teacher who's never built a business. Come on. This is entrepreneurship 101. You learn it out on the streets, in the markets. We're seeing an urban drift in Africa, which should be exciting, but it's not. Most of our African entrepreneurs are in the rural areas where things don't work. They're trying to plug gaps. They're being creative about it. Gaborone is now 400,000 people. It's still the fastest growing city in Africa. It's not a centre for entrepreneurship. It's become a centre for unemployment. Let's be really honest about it. And how are we going to change that? It's not the government investing, trying to create entrepreneurs. I think there's room for something different in the middle. And I think that there's a challenge for government, there's a challenge for industry, and there's a challenge for the youth. Bring all three together to find the solution. I think, unfortunately, all three are part of the problem now, they're not part of the solution. Let's learn from what's happening in the Middle East. Let's learn from what's happening in North Africa. There's a new sort of, I wouldn't actually call it education. It's getting those clever, smart graduates hungrier, give them the desire to do a job that they're going to love. It's educating the employers to be a little bit more flexible in what they're looking for. By bringing that together, we may create some solutions. In the UK, we've just seen where some of the really big blue chip consultancies, KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, have dropped the demand for a degree to join the organization. They're even dropping the demand for A-levels. Because they're saying some people have got gifts over and above what's taught in education. Drive, pace, energy, hunger, risk. I think it's time we start to think the answer isn't always education. We still have the mindset that I'm talking to some people in Southern Africa who are 40 years old and they're yet to work because they've done one degree, another degree, a master's, a PhD. It's making them fit for academia but fit for nothing else.
Yeah. So maybe if the situation carries on as is, we might see that hunger develop and those diamond entrepreneurs come through.
I've been lucky enough today to meet a couple of ministers. I was very impressed. A different language, a different mindset, a different connectivity. We spent some time in youth, sports and culture. Very impressive. More understanding, more connected. And can you believe a minister with a Facebook profile, who's on Twitter, who's connecting with the youth, engaging in a different way? Government can no longer be top down. It's now got to be interactive. And it was really interesting. The four most powerful words that ministers should use: what do you think? Then listen, then learn, then act. Businesses have had to do the same thing. All businesses have had to listen to a different social community with a different voice. If we don't engage, if we don't connect, we're no longer relevant.
In 2001, the formal sector provided jobs for 59% of those in employment. By 2011, only 52 of those employed had formal sector jobs. The world of work has changed from what most of us were groomed for. How best can we equip ourselves to thrive in these more challenging times?
When I was driving from the airport, coming into Gabs, we passed a number of fast food joints. KFC, Burger King, whatever, loads of fast food joints. If I'm studying, I would say to students, go and work in one of those. Why? You'll understand how a supply chain works. You'll understand customer service. You'll understand fitting into a team. You'll understand the digital world. You'll understand leadership. You'll understand team play. You'll understand collaboration. You only need to do 6 months. You've completely transformed yourself from someone who knows absolutely nothing about business to someone who knows everything about the basics of how a whole operation works. 6 months. If you go to West Africa, where I'm from, people are hungrier. We don't have the fabulous infrastructure of Botswana. The tap doesn't always work. The light doesn't always turn on. It creates a more natural hunger and desire. There are huge gaps in the marketplace that our governments can't fix, so the locals have to fix them. The role of the entrepreneur is to fix it, identify a gap in the market and try and fix it. And create money whilst you're doing it, creating employment while you're doing it. So I was sharing a story earlier on today. A very good friend of mine was Larry Drake, an African American. He was chief executive of Coca-Cola Nigeria and Central Africa. The business had never made money. He came in, turned it around, he was making money, changed all the logistical routes, all the driving routes. I went on a trip with him, and in central Lagos, we met a woman who was in her 70s, nearly 80s. And he asked her, what do you think of the new delivery route? She said, you're ruining my business. She was standing on a street corner with an ice box full of Sprite, Fanta, and Coca-Cola. And you could see Larry was humoring her, but he didn't quite think that I'm going to change the whole route for you. And I got talking to her. And in the conversation, she said her son is at Harvard Business School and her daughter was at Stanford Business School in California. I said, wow, how did they get in? She said she paid for them. And I'm thinking from this cold box sellers, she said, yes, but I've got 40 people that work for me on other street corners around Lagos.
This isn't it.
She was the biggest seller of Coca-Cola in central Lagos. Larry changed the route to support her. Show me that woman in Gaborone. Show me that woman.
Off camera, we were talking about how youngsters have been fed the line, follow your dream, follow your passion, and that is where the money is. And from our conversation, I got the feeling that it may be a dangerous thing to be teaching children. What are your views? What is your commentary there?
There is a mismatch between the jobs and careers our parents have and the jobs and careers that are available to us today. Our parents perhaps are not the best coaches, visionaries for the careers of their children anymore. The world that they would have entered, hierarchical, bureaucratic, usually 40–50% of Botswana's population working in government jobs, it's changing. The digital economy gives our children a different opportunity and a different chance. It's not follow your passion and follow your enthusiasm. Follow your desire and follow your hunger. Don't go where the path has been trod before, make your own path. It's a very different lesson to be taught. The digital economy, so our parents, when they were leaving to work for a bank, the bank had branches. Africa is still building banks with branches. Why? Why? When nearly everyone's doing it off a mobile phone. If you were to start a bank today, you wouldn't have branches. Let's understand the mindset. If you're going to work inside a bank and you're going to be successful, you're going to be digital. You're more likely to be a coder and a programmer than a cashier. It's really difficult for our parents to advise us in a world they've never lived in and experienced. Remember what I said at the start? 50% of American businesses have nobody on the payroll. There was a time when the organization chose the talent. Today, the talent can choose the organization if it has the confidence, if it has the wherewithal, if it has the skill set, if it has the desire, if it has the hunger. We've created a level of expectation and a culture of entitlement. Let's change that and create a culture of desire and hunger. That's the solution. Expect nothing more than an opportunity. That's it. If you've got an opportunity, you're winning. If you're bold, you might fail. If you're not bold, you will fail. Expect nothing. It's the best teacher in the world.
Renee Carriol was as thought-provoking as ever. What are your thoughts, however? Feel free to join in the conversation on any one of our social media platforms. Stay with us as up next, my co-presenter Bonolo Moletsane takes us through another issue of interest.
Tonight, we get to appreciate the importance of corporate social responsibility in the society as we take a look at the new public park that has recently been adopted by FNB Botswana. The public park, called First Park, is located in Tawana, Broadhurst. We speak to FNB Botswana Board Trustee, Ms. Regina Sikale-Selevaka, and FNB CEO, Mr. Stephen Bogatsu, who take us through the journey behind this fine establishment and how their commitment as a financial entity has seen through First Park to its success today. They share with us how the establishment that we see is aligned to their business strategy as a financial institution, especially given the difficult financial times.
Well, the thing about FNB is that it's the largest bank in Botswana. And as a responsible corporate citizen, it has embarked on a corporate social responsibility arm, which is the foundation. And it augurs very well with the strategy of the bank, because when you are doing business in any country, you have a responsibility to plow back some of your profits into that community so that you thank them and you appreciate the fact that they have supported you over the years. So it's very aligned in that way. It's part of being a corporate, responsible corporate citizen, and that's what the bank is.
We've got a number of stakeholders at FNB, and some of our stakeholders include staff and members of the community. This is an initiative that was started by staff members, and the foundation trustees decided to take it on board and broaden it. It's even more important now when everyone is facing difficulties that we do this, because the reason why we're embarking on such a project is to ensure that children have got an opportunity or are availed a facility where they can express themselves, where they can come and play. As you can see on the background, that kids are playing. So especially in these times of hardships, it's important that children do not feel the impact of the difficulties that their parents are going through.
We also asked our guests what need and gap has been filled or intends to be filled by the development of this establishment, and if we can look forward to more establishments like these.
Well, I'll take this opportunity to talk about what the foundation really does. Even if it is not a development of a park, again, we do have partnerships with various entities, and those partnerships are meant to help the disadvantaged, to educate, to participate in sports, anything that will uplift the community. So you find that in any community that you go to, the needs differ. If you go to Kumakwane, for instance, it's not going to be relevant in that society to come up with a park, but it may be relevant to come up with a project that is enhancing the women in that society. So we'll do something like that. If you go to another community, you find that they might have a need for the disabled to be looked after. So we'll be looking at a project that's helping those people that are disadvantaged in every community. So I can't promise you that you're going to see more parks like this, but I can promise you that you'll see other projects which are intended to uplift the community in whatever is relevant for that community.
Until our next issue of Interest, from myself, Bonolo Molezane, the rest of the First Issues crew, our most esteemed sponsor, First National Bank, we wish you a pleasant viewing and a wonderful evening.